So if you have missed the last couple weeks or part of this, like we talked about, we are diving into the book of Daniel. Has been really neat. Every week we're going to go through one or two chapters. So we are in the third week. So we are doing chapters 5 and 6. Give you a little bit of a recap. Greg preached last week and he talked about, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the fiery furnace. We've talked about this entire thing. Daniel, so if you've missed or not been part of this, I want you to just kind of know a little bit of what's going on. Daniel was taken away at about the age of 15 because he was good looking, he was strong, he was all of this, and then he has time and time again proven himself worthy. I mean, that's as short as I can go back. If you need more than that, dive into Daniel 1 through 4 and get caught up with us. But it's just such a great story. So we're talking about Daniel, and I'm also going to let you know, if you're following along the next 3 weeks, some of them are going to get confusing. They're going to get, I don't know how better to put it than uber confusing, right? He's going to start talking about dreams and stuff like that, and you're going to be going, what is John having us read? This is crazy, right? And we're going to explain it. Every Sunday we're going to come in. So before that, I thought we'd get a chance to dive into, two here, 5 and 6. 6 in the second is the entire Daniel in the Lion's Den, hence the Lion Sleeps Tonight song that I was back there kind of doing all the motions, right? Like all of that part, getting into that. But it's the life of faith. It's Daniel doing all of these amazing things. This week we talked with the kids and kind of did the Daniel in the Lion's Den with the kids. And how my dumb brain works, I'm walking through the grocery store and I see the rice cakes and I'm like, that looks like the face of a lion. Ask Jamie. That's what being married to me is like. And I'm like, what would make it more like that is Easy Cheese and Cheetos. But I couldn't think of anything for the eyes, so I brought Reese's Pieces for the eyes and nose. So the kids made these, and some of the kids ate them all, and which the Reese's with cheese, and I did not try it. If John's out there, he might tell you that little John, he ate the whole thing down in like 3 bites and said it was great. So apparently we're onto something. We're going to mass produce lions out of this and sell them because, but then of course you had to have a Daniel. So as I was leaving, I saw a box or a bag of Sour Patch Kids and went, that's the perfect Daniel, right? So the kids, those were the creations they made this week. That was one of my favorite ones. And as we talk about all of this in these stories, one thing that I do need to let you know that is super confusing for myself, and if you've read through this and may have got, is there's 2 different names, Belshazzar and Belshazzar. So, right, like Belt, the one with the LT, that was Daniel's, that they changed his name to. Belshazzar is the king that you dove into this week. So you may have dove into the scriptures this week and went, now I'm just all sorts of confusing because you didn't catch the little T in there. It's fine. I still had to put it on the slide so you guys could see it, but it was for me so I could remember the difference between the two also. So don't feel judged at all if you got confused, because I went to Bible college and I got confused sometimes too, right? So it's fine, but that's the point that we're diving into this. That's the point that we're talking about the life of Daniel and understanding that. So we're going to start right into Daniel 5, because I think this is one of those my weird sense of humor, irony stories, and maybe you don't understand it, but you will. So King Belshazzar made a great feast for the thousands of his lords and drank wine in front of the thousands. Okay, so he's having this big party. Belshazzar, when he tasted the wine, commanded that the vessels of gold and of silver that Nebuchadnezzar, his father, had taken. So maybe right away you don't even understand this. So Belshazzar is Nebuchadnezzar's son. If you remember last week, if you were here, Greg kind of portrayed Nebuchadnezzar at the end, he had everything given to him, and then at the end he goes kind of grows out his beard, hair, all this stuff, and goes out there because he realizes that God took everything away, that all the riches, everything he had as the king, he was given by God, and now God took that all away because he didn't give God the glory. So now comes his son, and Belshazzar here, and his son is talking about all this stuff. And so backing up there, when he tasted the wine, commanded that the vessels of the Lord of gold and silver that Nebuchadnezzar his father had taken from the temple, if you back up to week 1 there, right? That's all the stuff he took along with Daniel and all the prisoners, right? He also took all the fine goblets and fancy stuff, right? So he had taken from the temple in Jerusalem, be brought, that the king and his lords, his wives, his concubines might drink from them. So he went and said, all that stuff that my dad stole from the temple, come bring that, because I want to use that and we want to drink out of it. So then they brought the golden vessels that had been taken out of the temple from the house of the Lord in Jerusalem, and the kings and his lords, his wives, his concubines, all the fancy people, right, drank from them. They drank wine and praised the gods of the gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. So not only did they go do that, but now it's kind of like a slap in the face of God, right? Like he went and took all these holy items that were brought from the temple, and not only is he using it, but now he's using them and he's worshiping the God of gold, the God of silver. So he's literally, like, you would think, like, I would hope, Jackson's back there. Jackson, I hope you learn from your dad's dumb mistakes in life, right? Like, as a dad, you hope that, right? Like you hope that you learn, like, hey, listen, I'm really, really dumb. When I was changing that light bulb and I stuck my finger right in it, like, and shocked myself, like, I'll look at Jackson and be like, don't do that. Make sure the electricity's off. Like, you try to teach those things. So here Nebuchadnezzar is taught, like, you would hope that Belshazzar's learned from his dad. Like, his dad had everything and it was taken away from him. Like, learn from this. Like, learn from my dumb mistakes, right? But instead, Belshazzar goes, I'm going to have a party. I'm going to do this. I'm going to make everything. So then this thing happens. All of a sudden, in the middle of the party, this hand shows up and starts writing on the wall. And it's the creepiest, weirdest thing, right? Like all of a sudden, they're in this party, and I got to believe if I was at the party, I'd be like, okay, what did they put in the alcohol? What's going on, right? Like, but instead, this handwriting is going on the wall, and this hand writes this message on the wall. So first thing he does is you would, again, think he learned from his dad's mistakes, but he didn't. And he goes to all of his closest confidants and says, what is on the wall? What is this? Like, I'm going to back up for a second. If a hand came and started writing on the wall, my first question would be, what is the world is, why is this hand? Not what is on the, like, he went straight to, what does that mean? Not like, how did a giant hand come out of nowhere and write on the wall? Again, my dumb brain working. Like, but he went to, what does this mean? And so he goes and asks his friends, and they have no idea. Surprise, surprise, right? Like, we've learned that over and over in Daniel. The closest people to the king have no idea. All of a sudden, his wife comes in the room, and yes, all women can be proud. Like, the wife came in and said, don't you remember? There's this guy named Daniel. I'm just laughing. Like, I feel like this would be a very wife statement to say as the queen. Like, do you not remember Daniel? Like, your dad, he kind of bailed your dad out time and time and time again. Like, I don't know, I'd maybe ask him, right? And so he goes to this, and so they go and get Daniel, and he tells Daniel, I will give you everything earthly that you could ever want if you tell me what this means. And Daniel has, like, to me, like, the greatest, like, this again, sorry, backing up, this is 20 years later. So Daniel's like 65 at this point, right? So Daniel has, like, this great line to him, and he says, then Daniel answered and said before the king, let your gifts be for yourself, and give your rewards to somebody else. Nevertheless, I will read the writing to the king and make known to him the interpretation. So, right, like he's just sitting there going, I'm 65. I've proven over and over I don't care about things of this world. Keep all that stuff to yourself. And then before we get into this is my favorite part, because the little part between is Daniel, like, I feel like this is Daniel looking at him going, but first you're going to have to listen to me for a second. And he goes on to explain, like, your dad was an idiot. I told him time and time again to worship God, and he instead worshiped himself. I told him, hey, God will take care of this, and he kept turning away. So he's sitting there going, do you not get it? Your dad didn't get it, and it took losing everything for your dad to finally understand the power of God. Be smarter than that. But so he kind of, like, has his ear, like a very teachable moment, maybe as parents, like we do that, like, okay, I'll bail you out, but first you got to deal with the lecture. Any high schoolers? I don't know why I'm looking at you, Jonah. You ever have your dad do that to you? Like, first you got to sit through a lecture, and then I will give you the way out of it, right? Like, so he does that, and then he goes, okay, so here's what it says. And in this, the writing that was inscribed, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parson. This is the interpretation of the matter. Mene, God has numbered the days for your kingdom and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed in balance and weighed in the balances and found waiting. Pyrrhus, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. So he's pretty much like, this is like the worst lecture ever, because he's pretty much goes, it's too late. Everything has happened. It's too late. And Belshazzar gave the command to Daniel and was clothed with purple. He was given a chain of gold and put around his neck, and the proclamation was made about him that he should be the third ruler of the kingdom. And then that very night, Belshazzar, the king, was killed. Like, I don't know, this is how my weird brain works. Like, literally, he gives all the power to Daniel and is like, okay, and Daniel tells him, this is the end. Like, you've lost it all. You did not, you had the illustration of your dad to follow, and you didn't do that. You had all of this stuff, you messed it all up, and now you've lost your entire thing. It's going to be given over. And he's like, okay, you're now third in charge. Thanks for telling me what that handwriting on the wall means. And then he dies. And you're like, if you were reading this, you're probably like, what did I, like, no Hollywood script ever goes like this, right? Like, he's supposed to come back. But it just literally, and there's the end. That the three kings that Daniel faces through this entire thing, Belshazzar, we're done. Like, that's as quick. He came and went, and now we're done. And the entire part of that is just the power of understanding, like, as we move into this and as we get into the next part here, and the third king that Daniel's going to serve under, it's that amazing part to go and to see, like, Nebuchadnezzar had all of this time. Nebuchadnezzar had all of these chances, and it took losing everything for him to turn back around. Belshazzar went like straight at the jugular of God and said, I smite you, all this stuff, and it's like God went, you're done. And you start to wonder, like, why did Nebuchadnezzar get all these chances and Belshazzar got nothing? Like, it was like one and done. Was it so bad? Was it whatever? And it just got to that point. But then you look at it from Daniel's perspective and Daniel's growth, right? Like, Daniel being the young guy, now being the 65-year-old, and getting that power in what God wanted to move. And then so we move into Daniel 6, and now we get into the new part here with King Darius. And it starts off, it is pleased that Darius was set up kingdom into 120 satraps to be throughout the whole kingdom, and over them 3 high officials, of whom Daniel was one of those 3. So Daniel's now like one of these 3, and Darius already, like, as a person that loves history too, like, Darius already has my heart. Like first thing he does, Nebuchadnezzar wanted to say how great I am. Belshazzar wanted to say how great I am. King Darius comes in and he's like, okay, first thing I need to do is distribute some power. We need 3 people to be in charge, and they need to come back and help me. They need to come back so I can rule over the land better if I have other people that are in charge. So already I'm like looking at Darius going, this has to be better, right? Like, throughout the whole kingdom. And over the 3 high, and to whom these satraps should be give account, so the king might suffer no loss. So he's sitting there going, I'm trying to protect myself. And then Daniel became distinguished above all the other high officials and the satraps, because an excellent spirit was in him. And the king planned to set him over the entire kingdom. So now he's like winning, right? Like, he's doing the right things. He's doing all that. And the high officials and the satraps sought to find a ground for complaint against Daniel with regard to the kingdom. But they could not find no ground for complaint or any fault, because he was faithful, and no error or fault was found in him. So, right, like, we're looking at this going, Daniel has this. Everything, he's been given this, he's been giving this power. He's been given all of these wonderful things. Like, God is blessing all of the things that he did. And again, they're looking at him going, he's found no fault. Like, these other high priests want to find a flaw in him. And they want to do this, and they're sitting there and they're going, we got to do something. We got to find a way, because this guy is getting too much power. They're looking at this where Daniel the entire time is wanting the power to go to God. these other guys are wanting more power themselves, and they're getting jealous. They're getting upset. So they go before the king, and they try to butter him up, right? And they start off with the line, "May King Darius live forever," right? Like they're here, all these guys, and going as a group, like, "Hey, we got this." And I love the part, different interpretations, different of the scripture uses the words that they came and they said, "We are all in agreement," right? And like you look at that, and I feel like as a leader, I've never been a king. I know that's a surprise to lots of you. But as a king, if I had a group of people come before me and say, "We're all in agreement," your first red flag should be they're up to something not good, right? Like the same thing happens when people, right? Like when bad people, they try to get other people to come along with them and be like, "We've all been talking and you really need to work on this." And it's like, "Oh, thanks. Now I feel super attacked," right? Like, so they're all in agreement. So I feel like King Darius should have been smarter going, they all come in, they say, "We're all in this together." And the first thing I'd be doing is going, "Okay, why are you guys, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to manipulate?" But instead, because they buttered him up with that line, it's getting dangerous. And they say, "We're all in this together. We're all in agreement. And we need to sign this, we need you to sign this decree because something good's not happening. There's other people in your kingdom that are putting other people higher or things higher. And you need to sign this decree that nobody can, you can't pray to anybody but you for 30 days. And like, so as the king, he's probably not thinking like, "Okay, my good friend Daniel." He's probably thinking other people are worshiping other gods or all this stuff. So they've lost sight. I need to reel them back in. So he sets and he signs this decree, which the power of this decree is important because it can't be broken, right? And he signs this decree for 30 days that nobody can pray to anybody but him. And so we move into Daniel here and then Daniel knew that this document had been signed, and he went to his house where he had windows in the upper chamber open toward Jerusalem. He got down on his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God, as they had done previously. And these men came by this agreement and found Daniel making petition and plea before his God. So he's sitting there and he's praying. Daniel's up there praying, and then they came near and said before the king concerning the injunction, "O king, did you not sign that decree, the injunction, that anyone who makes petition to any god or man within 30 days except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions?" And the king answered and said, "The thing stands fast. So yes, the decree is true, according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be revoked." So according to the law, I can't undo what I signed. You are right. The next part here that we're going to, the power and that we're going to skip over or not read, but I want you to understand is he goes in, now King Darius is bothered by this, and he's like, "You're right, I have to do this, but I'm not happy about it." And I think he's starting to realize, you guys tricked me, but I can't not do something. You're right, I have to do this. So it says he like stayed up all day, like until sunset, because that's when he had to fulfill, right, the law. And he tried to find a way. He tried to find a loophole, right? Like I think of politicians right now, there's always trying to find a loophole. Or you have lawyers that look at a contract and go, "Well, actually in Article 17.7c down here at the bottom, you weren't standing on one leg when you signed it." Like he's trying to find a loophole, and he finds out there is no loophole. So he goes and gets Daniel, and he, excuse me, he goes and finds Daniel, and he puts Daniel in the lion's den. And he commanded, the Daniel was brought and cast to the den of lions. And the king declared to Daniel, "May your God, whom you serve, continually deliver you." Right? Like King Darius knows, like, Daniel, you've went through so many things. He already knows the history of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He knows all this, and he's like, "Okay, Daniel, I have to do this. I'm putting you in the den." So he puts them in the den. He puts his seal over it, and he says to him, "May your God save you." The next morning he wakes up, and King Darius wakes up, and it says that night he didn't, I just laugh because the translation says he didn't have any entertainment that night, which I feel like that's like our version of he didn't watch a movie, he didn't Netflix, like something to like binge watch to pass the time. He struggled so much, and he didn't sleep all night. He didn't have any entertainment brought in, I'm sure at that time. it was many different things, but he didn't bring in any entertainment. And first thing in the morning, he comes and he runs down there and he says, Daniel, are you okay? And he has the top removed. My God sent his angel and shut the lion's mouth, and they have not harmed me because I was found blameless before him and also before you, O king. I have done no harm. So Daniel's sitting here and he talks about all this, and he says to him, like, I've done nothing wrong. And so the king is just like beyond joy right now, right? Like he sat up all night worried about his friend. And the king was exceedingly glad and commanded that Daniel be taken up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den with no kind of harm found on him at all, because he had trusted in God. And the next part there, right, like this part that he says is so powerful. Like he does this, and the part, he ends with, I will make a decree that in all my royal dominion people are to tremble and fear before God of Daniel, for he is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his dominion shall be to the end. He delivers and rescues. He works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth. He has saved Daniel from the power of the lions. So the part I skipped over and I want to circle back to is, so after he gets Daniel out and they're celebrating, one of the things he does is he takes all of those guys that tricked him and his wife's, and we talked about this even with the kids, and it kind of gets gory there for a minute, because he takes them all and he throws them in the den of lions, and it says before their bodies even hit the bottom of the lion's den, they were eaten and destroyed and da-da-da-da-da. So yeah, it gets kind of gruesome. But the part that I think is important for us to remember in that little segment is to also understand that this is how amazing God works. One of my friends in Bible college, when we were talking about it, he's like, well, I'm sure they probably, the king fed the lions right beforehand, and that's why he didn't eat Daniel, or, there must have been something. We always look for a reason why, right? Instead of going, well, it's because, right? Like in the high school Bible study, we talked about this a couple months ago, and when they were talking about, side note, Moses and parting of the Red Sea, I watched a documentary of this scientist that was trying to disprove God, and he used the parting of the Red Sea, and he said, there's this phenomenon when wind blows the certain way that it will actually part water and do all that. And I'm like, do you not understand, though? That's God. Like, the chances of that happening at the right time, like, that's the amazing part. That's the part that we have to look at. We get so caught up in all of this part of the story that we understand that it's just God. God is so amazing. And all of those little details, the more you dive in, the more you're like, it has to be. There is no other explanation. So as we dove through Daniel 5 and 6 and two kind of chapters that are a little bit different, but yet the heart that I want you to take away from is in both of these is to understand from Daniel this week, your ministry, the things that you do, is literally, your ministry, the way that you show Christ, is literally everything that you do. It's easy for me, and I've said this before, it's easy for me when people hear that I'm a pastor to go, oh, obviously you tell people about God, right? But I want you to understand, and that whatever your job is, whatever you do, all of your interactions is literally everything that you do is to show people Christ. Your ministry, how you react, how you interact. I say this all the time. The ways that I coach my kids, the ways that I go into a store, the things that I do should speak more the volume of me being a Christian than what I say on Sunday morning up here. Every last aspect of your faith, every last aspect, everything that you do should speak more volumes. The way that you handle, if you're a boss, the way that you handle situations at work, the way that you come into work, literally everything that you do should show your ministry, should show people Christ. And if there's a part of your life that you say, well, this one isn't, then you don't understand Christianity. Let me put it that way. If you're coming on Sunday just to come here and check the box, if you're coming just because I feel good when I leave, that's not what it's about. It's literally what we do the other 6 days a week, the other 23 hours other than Sunday, right? Like, it's literally everything else. And the second part is to understand that prayer is important. Yes, Daniel getting caught praying, like the little kid's version of that, it was like he didn't step down, he didn't bow down. He could have prayed quietly. He could have, all of those other parts, yes, but the fact that he just prayed, because I felt like he was just going, God, you have this. What is it that you would have for me, God? What is it? Because, God, I've seen my 3 friends walk out of a fiery furnace. I've seen all of these things happen, God. What is it that you have? For us as a church, we've spent a lot of time, and before this church ever started, there was a group of people that came and prayed over this church plant. We've spent so much time praying, and on Saturday nights when I come and make sure all the last random things are taken care of, I try to pray over this church, and I try to pray over that. And I think prayer is something that we kind of just become comfortable with. We go to when things go bad, right? When we hear about somebody has got a bad diagnosis, or when somebody, we lose a loved one, or when something, bad happens at work, or we get injured or hurt, we turn to prayer, but we don't turn to prayer for the other things. And that's part of what Missy talked about, is on Wednesday night, Jamie and I just talked about this, and we threw it last minute, that Wednesday night, we just want a night of prayer. And you may go, this looks really weird. I don't know what that looks. I don't want to come to a building and sit there and bow my heads for an hour. That's going to be super boring, John. I don't want to be here. But I just if you have Wednesday night from 6 to 7, just come. Just come, pray over this church, pray over our community, pray over our kids, pray over people in our schools, pray over just everything. Spend some time, and I promise you, with my weirdness, it won't be too terribly boring. It'll be fun. I'm going to find some ways that we can just pray together and talk to God. We have decisions to make as a church. We have decisions to make in our community, what we want to do, things, and just spend some time. So if you have an hour Wednesday, let's learn from Daniel. I was convicted by that just by reading how many times Daniel went to prayer, how many times Daniel struggled, and he just went, okay, God, I need your help. Spend time. Prayer is so important. It's the most we can do, and it's the least we can do all at the same time. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you now. Thank you for the reminder of Daniel in the lion's den, a story some of us have heard since we're little. But the reminder and the refreshment of that story, to understand that the story is so much deeper, so much bigger than the story we heard as kids. It's a story of a man of faith, that was willing to give everything, that Daniel was willing to give his life to honor you, God. Every aspect of the life of Daniel, every aspect of the life of a slave, every aspect of him was given to you, God. May we live that life, God. May we live that life that is so powerful that we give every aspect of it. From our fears, from our sadness, but also our celebrations. May we spend a minute praying through conversations, people that we should invest in, people that we should lift up, people that just need to see you. And may we show them you by our actions and our deeds. May we be more like Daniel this week. May we strive to be a people of faith. May we strive to so much more than this world says is good enough. May we strive to be like you. It's in your name we pray. Amen.